So it's been a while since I've done a mailbag video in which I give my answers to your guys' questions of things that you're curious about. I think more or less I've been doing these once a month or so. More recently, it's probably been a little bit more than that, but with a lot of questions that actually came from the hot takes video, which guys, hot takes are actually takes or statements that you have rather than asking a question and calling it a hot take. But either way, it got me thinking I ought to do another mailbag video, and that's what we're going to be going over in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bull Central here. I hope you're all doing well. Guys, just wanted to take a quick second to thank you all my viewers, and getting the channel to 7,000 subscribers. Really, when I started this channel about 6 months ago, I never expected that it would grow in the way that it has. You guys have been absolutely incredibly supportive over these past few months, despite it not really being an easy time to follow the Bulls right now. So a huge shout out to all of you, and the road to 10K begins now. Well, I'm sure it'll be a while, but hopefully you guys will be on me with that journey, getting the channel there. I will have a pretty big giveaway for 10K subscribers, but I'll share more details on what that looks like as the time gets closer. Now guys, before I get into your questions, I did want to share the results of the poll in which I asked whether you guys thought the Bulls should pursue Derrick Rose in free agency. This was shortly after the video that I made on it, which in summary, I felt, that it wasn't a good idea to actually bring Derrick Rose this offseason, but based on the results of the poll, the majority did not agree with me, in that 77% of you, of some 2,000 voters, felt that the Bulls should go after Rose in free agency, which that's pretty high. Now, I did figure that there would be more yes votes than no, because most of us are Bulls fans and Rose fans, but that big of a swing, I mean, like I mentioned in my video, I just don't see how Rose fits a need on this roster, and bringing another score-first point guard that isn't the best playmaker and defender. I know he had an incredible season, particularly with the Knicks, and he was really the only player on the Knicks who showed up well in that playoff series against the Hawks. But I think what people forget is that Rose fits that New York team perfectly. I had a lot of people coming at me in the comments after that video. I even lost some subscribers, thinking I'm somehow hating on Derrick Rose on making that video, and that I don't know what I'm talking about because of the difference and the impact that he made on that Knicks team ever since being traded. Well, the fact of the matter is, people tend to forget that although Rose, really ever since joining the Timberwolves, has finally started making a comeback, a resurgence, if you will. Not the MVP Rose that we once knew, but he was playing much better, and he also played well with the Pistons. But again, the Pistons were one of the worst teams in the league in his time that he was there. As good as he wasn't really providing a ton of impact. Now, with the Knicks, on the other hand, before trading for Rose, they were the best defensive team in the league. But they really struggled on the offensive end. In fact, they were one of the worst offensive teams in the league. And by bringing in someone like Rose, a guy who is known for his offense but not so much his defense, he thrives in that type of role because they needed every bit of his offense that he could provide. And not much was expected of him on the defensive end, since the Knicks already had that covered. So it eases up his effort on the defensive end so he can focus on scoring. It kind of reminds you of when he was with the Bulls in his MVP year. He was the perfect offensive player, an elite scorer and slasher, a solid passer, and the Bulls were stacked. They were a stacked team on defense around Rose, and that team thrived as a result. Oh yeah, and Tom Thibodeau also coached the team, just like he is right now with the Knicks. But guys, the Bulls are the exact opposite of that right now. Right? They already have plenty of offensive players. They have enough scorers. What they need are elite defenders and playmakers that really get the most out of Lavine, Kobe White, and Vucevic. And Rose wouldn't fit with everything else that we have. Anyway, I know that was a bit of a tangent. Maybe I should have kept that for a separate video because I have a lot of thoughts on it, but that's all I wanted to say. And that, yes, I'm obviously a fan of Derrick Rose. I'm always pulling for him to succeed. I want to see him win a ring. He just doesn't fit the Bulls roster. As much as I like the nostalgia factor of all of this, we need guys that fit the mold that the front office is trying to build around. Anyway, let's get us kicked off with our first question, shall we? As this one comes to us from TMUS911. If Tice doesn't return, should the Bulls look for a replacement? So I assume you mean who there. Who could it be? So I made a couple Bulls free agency videos about a week ago or so, and I talked about the Bulls, really their need to make Tice a priority in free agency because they're going to need his rim protection and just his overall energy. So yes, as for your question, if Tice doesn't return, absolutely they need to look for a replacement. As far as who it could be, I mean, it's hard to replace someone like Tice because he gives you that athletic rim protection, but he's actually a decent scorer as well, especially in the pick and roll. I mean, a guy like John Collins would be a good replacement, and really John Collins, overall is a better player than Tice, which is why Collins will likely get a fat payday when he hits free agency. But again, Collins is going to cost more than someone like Tice, and he's a restricted free agent, so the Bulls really have to offer enough to where the Hawks would be unwilling to match for him. Regardless, though, the Bulls will have to find someone to replace Tice's defense, because there's no way they can get weaker on the defensive end going into next season. Next, we've got Aqib Saeed. Do you think the Bulls would re-sign Lowry and use him as a trade asset at next season's trade deadline instead of letting him walk for nothing this offseason? This one is interesting, and never really thought about the Bulls re-signing him and then holding on to him in order to trade him at the deadline. Obviously, the best case scenario is to just do a sign and trade for this offseason. That's where most of the rumors are circulating around that that's likely to happen. But let's say that the Bulls aren't able to get a sign and trade deal done, and that they're forced to either let him walk for nothing or matching an offer and keeping him. I mean, it's not a bad idea. This would give you a little more time to see how Lauri Markkanen does to start the season, to see if he can somehow have a bit of a resurgence to what we saw in his first 2 seasons in the league. And if he starts balling, great, you can either hold on to him or, like he said, you trade him before the deadline when his value is really high. That being said, it's risky because you might sign him to a contract that is worth much more than he's providing in terms of value. And then if he performs poorly like he did last season, or even worse, and now you can't find someone to trade his bad contract to. So it's not a bad idea, but I think it's unlikely. It would be too risky for the Bulls to do that, knowing that if they do re-sign him and he performs worse, they're going to be having a hard time finding a partner to get that contract off of the books. Next, we've got Josh Kahn. If the Bulls jump into the top 4, would you rather them draft with the pick or trade it in a package for an all-star? So I made a video about this as well a few weeks ago back, talking about how the Bulls getting a top 4 pick changes everything for them in terms of the trajectory of the franchise. Now, for me, I think if the pick lands between 2 and 4, you trade it in a package for an established player, a player who is going to bring you the things that the team needs, namely playmaking and defense. If it's the number 1 pick, no, you keep it. If you get a chance to draft Cade Cunningham, you take it, even if it means, he doesn't necessarily fit the Bulls' timeline right away, just because he has the potential to be a generational talent. He could be a bust, but he's the one player in the draft class that I would be willing to take a gamble on in keeping that pick. Next, we've got Adon. How many players do you think is necessary to let go of in this offseason? Been here since 1K, keep grinding. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, my brother, and shout out to all of my longtime subs who tune into the channel every day. Really appreciate you. As far as how many players I think the Bulls need to let go, well, I've talked about this before, and I really only see 7 guys coming back to the team. Lavine, Vucevic, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, Thaddeus Young, Tice, and Troy Brown Jr. My hope is they'll waive Aminu and use the stretch provision to spread out his contract over 3 seasons to get that, spread out for their books. All of the expiring contracts or team options I just don't see them coming back. And the Bulls really need to let those guys go in order to actually have a decent enough cap space to bring in some quality pieces. So to answer your question, we're talking about letting go a good 6 guys in the offseason. I think that's what it's going to take, really, to allow for the Bulls to be competitive enough to have the cap space to bring in a necessary free agent or a couple free agents to really improve the roster. Next, we've got Mike P. What is the max amount of money you would say you would pay Derrick Rose coming off a solid playoff performance? So I kind of went on a rant to start the video about Rose, but since in my opinion he doesn't fit what the Bulls need, I wouldn't pay much for him, right? And Rose deserves more than the amount that I would be okay with the Bulls signing him for. I think the max I would be okay with is $9 million a year for Rose if he's going to be signing with the Bulls. But that's because I'm more looking at this from the needs of the Bulls as a franchise and setting them up for success in the future. But Rose as a player, for what he brings, what he's been through, and the incredible season he had, he deserves a lot more. He deserves somewhere in the $13 to $15 million range. I really do believe that. And I mean, some of you think that might be a bit high, but if you look at Thad Young, the guy is going to be making $14.2 million if the Bulls fully guarantee his contract. You better believe Rose deserves a payday in that range for what he's been able to do, and clearly he still has gas left in the tank. Next, we've got Mad Fam. What else should the Bulls' biggest priority be going into the offseason? I mean, biggest priority over everything else. Now, this might surprise you because I know I've been harping on defense and playmaking really throughout the season whenever I talk about improvements that are needed to be made to the roster. But I actually think the priority should be around energy. How do you get this group to play with more energy, more effort and heart? This was the thing that bothered me the most about this season, was that the Bulls had the talent, but rarely would play with the effort for the whole game. That wasn't the sense of passion, the hunger that we used to see from the Bulls in the early 2010s. That it just wasn't there. And it's all about changing that mindset and getting all the players to want to win. That is a game changer. So the priority is, one, get the guys who are currently on the roster to play harder, whip them into shape, and stop playing lazy basketball. And then two, focus on bringing in guys in the offseason who are those type of high energy, high impact players that the rest of the team can feed off of. Yet another reason why I still believe trading Daniel Gafford was a mistake. I mean, that's just one example. But anyway, this offseason, the priority should be changing that mindset to being a team that plays with energy and passion. Next, we've got Spitfire. If you could put any Bulls bench player from the franchise's entire history on our team now, who would it be and why? Really good question. I like these type of unique questions. Really, I've got to go with Toni Kukoc. Yeah, I know Kukoc started a good deal of games as well throughout his career, or his time period anyway, with the Bulls, but he was more often than not coming off the bench. He won Sixth Man of the Year award in 1996, and really you could just replace him for Markkanen, if Lowry ends up not returning to the team. Toni Kukoc, he was a great shooter, a very crafty ball handler for his size, and a great passer. People forget that in his prime, he was usually averaging around 5 assists per game, and was one of the Bulls' best passers in those dynasty years. For his size, that was pretty impressive at that time. And on top of that, he was a decent defender as well. So I think he would fit perfectly with this team, again, for any past bench player on the Bulls. Let's do one more, as I know that this video is dragging on a bit. This one comes to us from Noah Fenton, and I knew this question would eventually come. If Chris Paul declines his player option, should we go all in for him and give him a long-term contract? So I'm sure some of you saw the report that came out from Bleacher Report, which, mind you, it's Bleacher Report, take it with a grain of salt, especially since it hasn't really been confirmed elsewhere, but the report stated that Chris Paul expects to decline his $44.2 million player option, even though I know that says $44.4 million here. That is incorrect. Come on, Bleacher Report, get it together. This is literally your job. But anyway, the claim that he is going to decline his player option, well, first off, I have to say, I would be pretty surprised if he did this, if he is going to decline it. But, if he did, unless he's already been given assurances from the Suns that they are planning on extending a longer term deal to him that would be more lucrative, say a 3-year, $100 million deal where he would be getting paid $33.3 million guaranteed over the next 3 seasons rather than just getting his $44 million, but then having a down year next season, or even worse, an injury that would all but end his career, why not lock in $100 million guaranteed now, even if it means making a little less in that first year of the contract than he would if he exercised his player option. And at his age, coming off a great season, and you really, never know if he's going to start to decline or get injured, then yeah, if he's pretty confident he can get a longer term contract, which, likely will be the last contract of his career, then yeah, obviously you go for it. Now, as far as your question, should the Bulls go all in on him? And man, this one's tough because on one hand, Chris Paul is the most ideal fit for the Bulls in terms of his leadership, his experience, his impeccable court vision and passing. He's a great floor general, and he plays elite defense. He's a 9-time all-defensive player. He's everything the Bulls would need to complement Lavine and Vucevic, and also mentor Kobe White. But it's also a gamble, because he's older. The last thing you want to do is give out a massive contract to a player that could start to decline quickly. And now you have little to no flexibility in terms of your cap space for the next few seasons. And that can really set back your franchise even further. But again, the reward could also be there, because if CP3 is able to maintain this level of play, the level of play that we've seen this season, the Bulls would instantly become contenders. Not saying that they're going to just start winning championships like that if they get Chris Paul, but they would be one of the top teams in the East with Chris Paul alongside Lavine and Vucevic, especially since CP3 already knows Billy Donovan's play style and his system, and they have respect for one another. So to be honest, I really just don't know. Should they go all in? Shouldn't they? it's risky, but it could also pay off greatly. And the other thing is, we know this front office likes to make aggressive and bold moves. They're not afraid to take risks, but I think at the end of the day, Chris Paul will either take his player option or extend to stay with the Suns, especially if the Suns make a deep run in the playoffs. Anyway, guys, I will end it there for now. Thank you to all of those who left questions. Sorry if I wasn't able to get to yours. I'll try to do more of these mailbags throughout the offseason. As always, you can feel free to DM me through various my social platforms on Instagram, Discord, or Twitter. If you ever have a question or you want to chat about Bulls basketball, I try to reply to as many people as I can. And as always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.